Well, I was looking through my notes here, and our first meeting was September 12th, 1994. First meeting. The assistant scoutmaster was Jack Chase, who has since moved away, and most of the people here on the Hill would not know him. And he was the one who basically said his son was moving into Scouts, and basically said, "Jeff, we want to start a new troop, and if you agree to be the leader, I will be there at your side helping you get the troop started all the time." Because that's really what I need. In any kind of a scout leader situation, you need a group of parents, a group of adults, but to start a troop, I wasn't going to do it unless there was really help, because I had been a scoutmaster a few years before at Troop 380, and there was a little bit of extra effort to do this again. But I'm an Eagle Scout, and I love Scouts. I like what it has done for my two boys, who are both Eagles. I'm an Eagle. My wife's father is an Eagle, and his father is an Eagle. So there's a bit of a heritage here. But I did it just because it was good for the boys that I saw in the community, and also my own sons. But I also add that in the early days, there was a group of girls, including my daughter, who was interested in Scouts, more interested in the camping, what I call the cooking in the mud setting for Scouts, than doing what the Girl Scouts would typically do. She was a Girl Scout, but she was very interested in being a part of a group of girls, and they actually created a girls' patrol. Now Scouts. In particular in Capitol Hill, you do a lot of things that aren't necessarily official, or before they become official, years ahead. And this was a case where the girls were not old enough to be what became known as Venture Scouts, but they were, 2/3 of them were family members, so it was kind of semi-legit. And they formed a patrol called the Expeditionary Force, and they would camp and do everything as a self-contained unit, and out of that grew her interest in all of the high adventure stuff in Scouts. And as she aged into that, she also did canoe trip and Philmont and other scouting high adventure things. So it's been a bit of a family thing. My wife was very active in Cub Scouts, and was certainly an active parent as we morphed into Boy Scouts. So we got started because some boys were advancing through Cub Scouts. The other troop on the Hill was at St. Peter's, and that was Troop 380, and I had been associated with that earlier, as I mentioned. And the priest there, Father Sullivan, was really less and less interested in the leadership not being in the parish, and for that matter, the boys in the troop who weren't in the parish. He wasn't interested in the troop that kind of blended into the whole community. He was interested in supporting the church, and that's fine. But that left a number of us on the outside, and so some adults came to me and said, help form the troop. Now, the first troop committee chairman was Bob Yates. I think I mentioned Jack Chase was the assistant scoutmaster. And Bob is the one that got the troop certified, and he went to the headquarters and registered, and he came back and said, "Jeff, I got a troop number for us. It's 500. It's the same as your home address. I think you can remember it." Good question. So we met at Capitol Hill Baptist Church. And we met there for several years. When did I say it formed? 1994? Is that the year? Things evolved. So we were there for several years, I guess is the best way to put it. I'm going to look at a letter here in a moment where we actually left Capitol Hill Baptist Church in 2001. I may be missing something in here. We may have met at, elsewhere, like at Capitol Hill Presbyterian. And I think there was maybe even was one other church we met at. But I know one of our homes was Capitol Hill Baptist, and that's where we were at a time when we felt Scouting was misplacing its values to some extent with regard to particularly gays in the troop, gay leaders, lesbians, whatever, and we evolved. At this point, I was no longer Scoutmaster. I think I was troop committee chair and leading. And I tell you, it's one of the proudest moments of my life in Troop 500. And I'm looking here at two things. One is the letter to the Capitol Hill community, February 2001, where we wrote about, begins, as many of you may be aware, over recent months there has been considerable controversy and discussion concerning the position that the National Council of the Boy Scouts of America has taken with respect to participation of homosexuals, particularly homosexual leaders in Scouting. And that begins a statement of the community. I alerted Capitol Hill Baptist to this position that we had taken, and actually we met with the regional headquarters, National Capital Area Council leader, and fully informed them, and we just asserted our right to be an open troop, open in terms of and created a diversity statement is really what we called it, and we shared that with the council, shared that with the community, and I made clear to share that with the Capitol Hill Baptist Church, because I was pretty sure, one, they would want to know that, and guess what? They took action. I have a letter in front of me that I received March 2nd, 2001, said, "Thank you for telling us so quickly about the decision," and the letter basically says, and we invite you to leave. And that doesn't surprise me. That's not a highlight of my comments here. The highlight is that we did that. That was 2001, and here we are, 2015, and the National Scouts finally came to the same position. And I'm pleased that we did that. We did that openly, and it didn't create any turmoil. It didn't create any change initially. It was the right thing to do. So I wanted to comment on that. The other thing I wanted to comment was we talked a little bit about high adventure work. Merle led us to go to Maine, the high adventure camp there. The high adventure trips were really a very important part of, I feel, my contribution, particularly even if I wasn't there trying to stimulate that they happen. So when we took a group, again, of boys and girls to the Adirondacks base in New York State, where we could do for a week or 10 days a half hiking and half canoeing. That was kind of interesting. We did, as I said, several trips to Maine. We did the Florida Sea Base, and I'm glad to see that tradition has continued. And then after I left as committee chair, about a year later, the interest in the Florida Sea Base morphed into doing something more adventuresome. Now, the leaders at that time knew that I had chartered big boats for our family in the Virgin Islands. And my son, Patrick, who I said was the first Eagle Scout of Troop 500, had also done some rather adventuresome sailing, including a year off sailing and all the way from Cape Cod to almost Venezuela and back in a relatively small 26-foot sailboat with a friend. And so they were interested in us doing something beyond the sea base, which is sea base is kind of tame, really, And so we said, well, if we're going to do something, we're going to have to avoid the hurricane season. That means probably we need to go pretty far south in the Caribbean chain and charter. And we basically created, with the boys and girls, again, a trip where we rented two boats in Grenada, sailed Grenada, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and did about a 10-day trip there. Much more open sailing than you get in the Virgin Islands, but importantly, so far south it is very unlikely you're going to have hurricane issues in the summertime, or at all. So that was my last trip with the Scouts, and it was really after I no longer had an official position, but was kind of called back into duty to do that, and that was just a lot of fun. A lot of fun. Open sailing. A lot of, some sailing where you're out of sight of land. Yeah. I think the tip that I would be important would be to stay involved, pay attention to the advancement, because young scouts that don't advance lose interest. Scouts that advance and are willing to become leaders, that interest develops and it shapes the rest of your life from that. So I would say the key, some people, there's an old saying, I'm going to paraphrase this wrongly, but it was effectively the most important thing to do in life is to show up. And in a way that's relevant here. Coming to scout meetings, advancing, participating, not just sitting back and letting other people tell you what to do, I think is what I think is the most important for a young scout.